have the opportunity to speak in front of my teachers and friends about my MA thesis, which has just been published by İttifakı, titled as Zionism Karşıtı Yahudiler or Jews Against Zionism in English. So we see that this issue is unconsciously neglected in Turkey to a large extent, especially in our country. And this group, as a small group but important variable in the equation of Israeli and Palestine issue, is gradually growing day by day and can have an impact on the future of Israel in particular and for the future of Israel and Palestinian issue. So our subject is, before going into the detail, I would like to express why I wrote this thesis, is because when you observe especially the Turkish people, you will see that even the word of Jew, just enough for make their hairs like raise. They just, I mean, especially if they're like religious people, they're like some kind of unconscious anti-Semites because of their anti-Zionist views. So when I first realized this, I decided that I should write something about this, because no one in Turkey, especially even myself, I didn't know that if there were any Jews against Zionism. So this was like for those who have like superficial knowledge about Zionism or Israel. Even the title of this work is like, sounds like a paradox. How can a Jew be a Zionist? Is like they're like self-hating or something. So not to fall into the trap of the Zionists and not to be unconscious anti-Semites, we should know, we should differentiate between Judaism or Jewishness and Zionism. These ideas were just my motivations when I started to write this thesis. So the subject is about the Jewish critique of Zionism. Zionism is an ideology of Jewish nationalism that emerged in the 19th century in Europe among a small group of assimilated Jews based on different reference points. I mean, the Jewish critique of Zionism, the critic is not a monolithic critic. There are religious critics and there are secular point of views. So when we say to a person who has a really superficial knowledge about these Jews, this image directly comes to one's mind, the religious anti-Zionist Jews. So they're not the only one. I mean, there are a lot of different groups. I mean, maybe secular Jews who are really against, severely opposing Zionist ideology. However, through their protests, especially in the United States, they are already in the media and news. So maybe you would think before my presentation that there are just a religious kind of opposition to Zionism. However, there are also secular oppositions. So to be able to talk about Jewish anti-Zionism, we should first talk about what Zionism is. And to be able to talk about what Zionism is, we should more focus on the history, the Jewish history. I mean, maybe the Jewish religious tradition, because the return to Zionism did not emerge with Zionism. Return to Zion. By the way, Zion is the name of the mountain in Jerusalem, and is the term that is used in Bible for instead of Jerusalem. So Zion means Jerusalem, meaning that the broader region, broader like the holy land. So there, the point that I'm trying to make here is that there are continuities of the Zionist ideology, between the Zionist ideology and the Jewish religious tradition. So, which is especially related with the messianic redemption. So, when we say Jewish religious tradition, it has, of course, many things to do with Zionist ideology. So there are, let's say, three important elements of Jewish religious tradition, which is quite a bit related to return to Zion. I think to make these ones clear first will make us better understand what Zionism is, and then what opposition to Zionism is about. So the land, according to the Jews, is really like central element in their ideology. So this land is given to the sons of Israel by God's covenant with Abraham, and he gives this land to Abraham and his offspring. And being on this holy land is not without any like prerequisite. The Jews should be like good Jews to be able to stand and live on this holy land. So this is important prerequisite to continue living on this land. So exile is the opposite situation of being in the land. So exile, galut in Hebrew and diaspora in Greek language, is actually the divine, understood by Judaism, is like as a divine punishment for the sins that is committed in the on the Holy Land. So this being on the land and being in exile is two opposite things, and all the target for a Jew is always return to Zion. And the feature of this return is determined by the understanding of Messianism in Judaism. So when the pains of exile outweigh the sins, God sends the Messiah. God gathers people in Eretz Israel, means the lands of Israel or Palestine or Holy Lands, whatever you call. And this is called redemption. The understanding of redemption in Judaism is quite a bit related to Messianic understanding, and this Messianic understanding tells the Jews wait in a passive way without using any political or military tools to return this land. Just wait patiently till the pains of exile outweigh the sin, so that God will miraculously, supernaturally send the Messiah, and Messiah will establish the state, and the Jewish people will gather miraculously in this holy land. So what the Jews should do, all they should do is just wait and pray. So the important element, maybe the thing that make the Jews passive throughout the centuries is the belief. Is an element in sacred texts, which is called three oaths. There is a verse or passage in Torah says, "I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles and by the hens of the field, that you won't awaken or stir up love."
Is this the Song of Solomon?
Yeah, Songs of Songs.
Song of Songs. It's the same, no? Song of Solomon and Song of Songs is the same, I think.
The same, I think it's different.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but this is from Songs of Songs anyway. So don't stir up love until it please. This is like don't go to the Holy Lands until it comes to you like miraculously. So this this is not the only passage that comes in Torah. There are two more like this. I mean, in the Songs of Songs chapter of Torah, there are three passages which gives almost the same meaning with this. So in Talmud, we can say that Talmud, which is a commentary of Torah, they say that, I mean, a rabbi just making it interprets why this
Yes,
verse.
it is the same thing.
The same thing, okay. So why this verse just comes in three different ways? Why God says this? I mean, meaning in three different verses is that, according to the interpretation in Talmud, is that God gave three oaths from the people. Two of them is from Jews, and one of them is from non-Jews. They call them, I mean, as Goyim, from Goyim. So the first oath is that the Jews should not rise like a wall, which means not to move to Israel en masse. The Jews are not allowed to go to the Holy Lands in a community, or even they're not allowed to establish a state there. And this is like a swear that the Jews, the oath that the Jews swear to God. And the second one is also swear by the Jews. The Jews should not rebel against the nations of the world. This is about the exile thing. They were exiled in Jerusalem, in the Holy Lands in 70 CE. So they still have been continuing to live under the different nations of the world. So the second oath is about they should not they should obey the leaders of the nations that they live. So they should be passive wherever they live. So the third oath is the oath that God take from non-Jews. The nations of the world will not excessively oppress Israel. So this is demonstrated as for example, when we think of Holocaust, some Jews says that Holocaust is the violation of the third element of these three oaths. So we are not obliged to obey the other three. So we can establish our own states. This is the argument of religious Zionists. Anyway.
Are these explicitly said in Talmud, or these are interpretations by Jewish scholars?
The same thing actually. The Talmud includes this what I wrote here. In Talmud
Can you make a distinction? So can you explain what the Talmud is? So that
Talmud
becomes more clear.
Is like a commentary of
Exactly. Talmud itself is exegesis anyway.
Yeah. Like tafsir of Quran.
Yes.
Talmud is tafsir of Torah. So there are three verses in Torah. So why this verse came three times in Torah? They just interpret it through the understanding of three oaths. So okay, so the three oaths is the understanding constituted the Jewish mindset throughout centuries. The three oath conception made the Jews be passive under the nations that they live. So I'm explaining the Jewish religious tradition. However, this has to do with Jewish anti-Zionism today as well. So that's why we are not taking too much time in the introduction. So in the age of nationalism, this mindset I mean, the Jewish religious tradition, the Messianic understanding, why they didn't attempt to like go return their homelands is like shattered. Enlightenment provided the Jews equal citizenship, and this resulted in the break in Jewish identity. So maybe we should a little bit talk about what Jewishness is, what Jewish identity is. Jewish identity is a unique one. It comprises not only the religious dimension, but also it has an ethnic dimension. However, with the Enlightenment, there are Jews, the Jews themselves reduce their identities either to religion or ethnicity. In Western Europe, especially in Britain, in Germany, Jewishness was conceived only an identity only about religion. This has reasons. For example, especially in Britain, the Jews even came to like governmental positions in government. So they got really their social status increased with the Enlightenment. So they were happy in the countries that they lived. So what was this Zionism thing? So to protect their social status, they believed that they attempted to interpret their identity as a religious identity. For example, they started to call themselves as I am a Jew, but a British Jew. So where they born became their ethnic identity, a French Jew, a German Jew, and etc. In Eastern Europe, however, Jewishness was only about ethnicity. Calling the Jews, understanding the Jewishness only through nationalism perspective. So this bore into a Zionist ideology. So Zionism is an ideology of Jewish nationalism, claiming that Jews constitute a nation, unlike the Jews in Western Europe. So, like all the other nations, the Jews have the right to create their own nation state. However, this ideology, when it first appeared in Europe, faced severe, harsh oppositions, not only from religious Jews who had the mindset that I explained in the beginning of my talk, the Jewish religious tradition, the passivity, and not to return back to the Holy Land through using military or political tools, but also the liberal Jews, especially in Western Europe, or the socialist Jews started to be against this ideology. So, as I said, there are religious and secular dimensions. When we look at how they express themselves, we see that, maybe the prominent books about this issue classify these Jews into three categories: religious Jews, who are against Zionism, liberal Jews, and socialist Jews. So religious opposition to Zionism is actually about what I explained again about the religious tradition, the three oaths and etc. So it is based on Jewish sacred texts like three oaths in Talmud, and the return to Zion should happen.
What is that word?
I don't know. Miraculously, should be miraculously, not politically or militarily, as the Zionists did. So they believe that Zionism Zionism and Zionist state is a sin because they violate the religious beliefs. And the efforts and activities of Zionists is a sheer disobedience to God, because they, according to their religion, they should wait passively until the pains outweigh the sins, so that God will send the Messiah, and the world empire will be established in Palestine. Even though for example, when we think of the Jews who live in Palestine today, they are called Haredim or ultra-Orthodox Jews, but they don't like to be called as ultra-Orthodox. Like, for example, when Muslims, a practicing Muslim, doesn't like to be called as fundamentalist. This is the same issue. So, however, we call them ultra-Orthodox Jews. They believe that they still live in exile, because the state is itself, against the teachings of Judaism. So the state is existentially illegitimate. So through being included in the government and trying to solve this issue in governmental issue is prohibited for them. That's why they reject. I forgot the word. Military, conscription. They reject conscription, and they even reject. They don't even have identity card. The state of Israel or something. They just live there.
How do they justify having gone? That's what I don't understand.
Okay.
How do they then justify having gone there in the first place?
Actually, the great amount of the Jews that still been living in Israel, Palestine, is the continuity of the population during the Ottoman times. A great population. A number of them came.
Yes.
The newcomers, let's say, new Yeshu, an anti-Zionist one, came there not for Zionist aspirations. They just came here. Maybe they just making tobas in their hearts. But when we think,
if it's against their oath, how can they go? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, we should first understand the migrations. Why the migrations occurred especially in the 19th century and in the beginning of 20th century, and this is about for example, there were pogroms in Russia.
Okay.
So approximately 2 million of Jews migrated migrated out of Russia. More than 1.5 million of Jews migrated to the United States, and only 125,000 Jews migrated to Jerusalem, and this was before the establishment of the British mandate. So they migrated to Ottoman Palestine, and without any aspirations of without any Zionist aspirations, and the ratio is really low compared to those Zionists who migrated to Palestine with Zionist aspirations. So they still continue living under, when we look, they still continue living under the state that they claim that existentially illegitimate. That's why they are trying not to be included in any governmental things, and etc. So Israel should peacefully be destroyed, and the Jews should wait for the Messiah under the Palestinian state. This is what they argue today. For example, Notre Carta is maybe the most important group of these religious Jews against Zionism, and they mainly live in the United States and just making protests against the Israeli state and its policies, and it's their like what they want is peaceful destruction of the state of Israel and establishment of Palestinian state instead, and wait for the Messiah to come miraculously. So this was the religious opposition. And liberal humanists, by the way, the picture that was here, they are religious. They religiously oppose to Zionism. So liberal humanist opposition to Zionism is actually the opposition of the Jews who lived in Western Europe, since, as I mentioned before, since they got important positions in society, they preferred not to return to Palestine, and they prefer to be integrated in the broader society in the framework of universalism. So they are those who got important positions, as I mentioned. So for them, Zionism is an utopia, even though it came true. Claiming rights over a country which was already possessed by another nation would not be a solution to the Jewish problem. Before the establishment, before the emergence of Zionism, there were already the problem of Jews in the age of nationalism in Christian Europe. So the European society didn't know what to do, how to handle this Jewish problem. So while the Zionist ideology was one of the many alternatives presented for the Jewish problem, the liberal humanist Jews proposed another alternative, which is to first differently define their identity, reducing it only to religion, so that they can adopt the ethnic identity of the countries that they live. So the tribalistic nationalism of Zionism is of course against their what they have in their minds. So according to them, the Jews are not a nation, but a religious congregation. So and the Zionist state is against democracy. These are the brief explanation of their ideas. And they live especially in the United States, Britain, and Germany. And these are the names, the important groups today: International Jewish Anti-Zionist Network, Jewish Voice for Peace, Independent Jewish Voices, and etc. And socialist opposition to Zionism. By the way, these oppositions emerged when the Zionism emerged, and still continues today. So the socialist opposition has, as can be guessed, the internationalist attitude of socialism is the main reason of their opposition. So the nation states are not only anachronisms, but also out-of-date remnants of capitalism, according to them. The real solution to the Jewish problem is the emancipation through the proletariat revolution. Last but not least, Zionism is a racist, colonialist, and imperialist ideology which serves to the interests of the West by hindering the progress in the Arab world. So the prominent groups are Bund and Bund, Matzpen, and today Noam Chomsky and Norman Finkelstein. So the historical turning points of the rise and fall of the volume of the Jewish anti-Zionism. Regarding that, the Holocaust and the establishment of State of Israel softened the Jewish opposition to Zionism. So when the Zionist ideology appeared, it was a minority ideology. Most of the Jews was against this ideology, was opposing this ideology. However, in the beginning of the 20th century, I mean, with the Holocaust and the establishment of the State of Israel, just softened their opposition, and gradually majority of the population became Zionists. But the other turning point regarding the re-increase in the volume of the Jewish anti-Zionism is the events that I brought here, the 1967 Six-Day War, the 1982 Lebanon occupation, and 2006 Lebanon war.
How do you measure this increase?
I mean,
What is your...
there are people and there are studies who, or there are groups that are established after these events.
Okay. So there are, so you say it increased because you see the rise of new anti-Zionist Jewish organizations.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the details are in the book.
Available at his publishers.
So these wars, I mean, the violent policies of Israel awakened anti-Zionism, but since that the Israel's policies really violent and caused many people's killings and etc. These events shifted the anti-Zionism tone, the liberal, especially the secular ones, the liberal and socialist anti-Zionism, to a more humanitarian base. So after 1967, especially after the 1980s, with the emergence of post-Zionism and new historians in Israel, post-Zionists became the representatives of liberal and socialist opposition to Zionism in the academia. For example, Noam Chomsky are counted as one of the post-Zionists, or especially Ilan Pappé. So, despite their socialist ideas, they have also humanitarian. Their position arises from their humanitarian sensitivities as well. So the most important issue is the question of is Zionism anti-Semitism?
Anti-Zionism.
Is anti-Zionism anti-Semitism? So this, we can say that the identifying anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, or identifying Zionism with Judaism or Jewishness, is the Zionist strategy to turn the anti-Zionism's volume down. So they identify Zionism and Judaism so that those who are against Zionism can be automatically be anti-Semitic. So they, through this account, they claim all the anti-Zionisms as anti-Semitisms or anti-Semitic. And they call the the Zionists call the anti-Zionist Jews self-hating Jews or anti-Semites, and these anti-Zionist Jews instead replying by the slogan of "Not in my name," they claim that what Israel and the Zionist state is doing in Israel, especially towards the Palestinian people, all that stuff are not in our names. They say this. So the most important conclusion that should be derived from this work is that Zionism is not Judaism and anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Thank you.